So many of you may or may not already know that PetSmart had a huge rebranding of their line, All Living Things, which is now called Full Cheeks. With this new rebranding, they also have come out with not one, not two, but 3 hamster enclosures. So I figured I would look through these new enclosures with you guys and give you my honest thoughts and opinions on them. The first thing I do want to mention, because in the past when I've talked about Tiny Tails and All Living Things, I have had people try to tell me that PetSmart does not own these brands, which in fact PetSmart does own these brands, and this is public knowledge. Tiny Tails, All Living Things, and Full Cheeks all are owned and trademarked by PetSmart, and this is also why you can only get these brands in PetSmart. This is also public knowledge. You can find the trademark information online. Here we can see that Full Cheeks is owned by PetSmart Home Office Inc. So PetSmart is fully responsible for creating these products. I do find the new name a little bit odd. You can also find some humor in Full Cheeks. I think it only works for hamsters personally, because the only animal who actually stores things in their cheeks is hamsters, but that's just getting a little bit nitpicky. I don't really know why they decided to create an entire new brand and not just stick with All Living Things. It's possible that because their Tiny Tails and All Living Things brand has had a lot of negativity towards it, they're trying to move away from that by just having a new brand name. I'm also curious if they're going to continue to sell Tiny Tails enclosures. The first cage that we're going to take a look at is the Full Cheeks Small Pet Quick Clean Apartment, and it goes for $69.99 US. The size that is listed on the box is 23.7 inches long, 18.1 inches wide, and 16.6 inches high. Now, the first thing that I have noticed with each of these cages we're going to look at is that suddenly PetSmart has decided that they're going to start including the square inches of spacious accommodations on the box. So according to this box, this enclosure has 383 square inches of floor space. I can't verify that because I'm not able to measure it in person, so we're just gonna have to go by that. Now, they've likely started adding square inches onto the box because, let's be honest, PetSmart doesn't live under a rock. I'm quite sure they are aware of the different pet communities, and they may have noticed that in the hamster community in particular, people are constantly talking about total floor space, which is good. But what they've lacked in doing is listening to the correct cage sizing. The next thing included inside of the enclosure is a wheel, and it is 6.5 inches. I don't understand why PetSmart can't seem to grasp the things that are said in the hamster community. In all of these cages, you will notice the product, the model they're using inside of these enclosures is a Syrian hamster. I am going to insert a clip of what it looks like for a Syrian hamster to run on a 6.5-inch wheel. As you can tell, that looks incredibly painful. Syrian hamsters are way too big for a 6.5-inch wheel, and that makes me question PetSmart's design team or the supposed vets that are supposed to check over these products. Have they ever held a Syrian hamster? Have they ever watched a Syrian hamster run in these wheels? And if so, who in their right mind watches an animal whose back is completely curved and says, yeah, that's fine? Not to mention, you're not going to be able to use that wheel, and you actually don't have any other space to put in a proper wheel. And this goes for dwarf hamsters as well. Next, we have the pan depth. This is not something that is listed anywhere, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that it's possibly 6 inches deep. It says that it is a pull-out base for easy, convenient cleaning. But then you got this giant ramp right smack in the middle so that you can't fill the base up all the way. So sure, you could technically just remove that ramp and then fill the base all the way up, but because it is a pull-out base, I definitely can see how bedding would be able to just fall out when your hamster is trying to burrow. You know what? I'm going to take back what I said. It doesn't even look like a 6-inch base. I think that might be a 5-inch. And as we all know, burrowing is super important for hamsters. This is a really great enrichment for them, and they need deep substrate in order to create burrows. You can't create burrows in this much bedding. That's not a burrow. That's just hiding underneath bedding. Another thing that they include is the Easy Fill food dispenser. And in the image, you can see it's just filled with like pellets. I think this is overall a very lazy and terrible product for hamsters. This is just encouraging people to just fill up their hamster's food and that they never have to do anything else because they don't have to constantly feed them. Your hamster's not getting any enrichment out of that feeder, and it kind of looks like that feeder only works with pellets. I don't know if it works with seed mix, but just feeding your hamsters pellets that's a terrible diet. You're taking away enrichment from them. It's a terrible product. I'm sorry. Next up, we have the Full Cheeks Small Pet Hamster Town Home, and this is going for $89.99 US. The size on the box is 23.8 inches long by 14.3 inches wide by 11.5 inches tall. Wow, that is not tall at all. That's interesting. So on the box for this enclosure, they have it listed as having 389 square inches of floor space. But it seems that PetSmart is including that top floor plus the bottom, because if we do the simple basic math, 23.8 times 14.3, that only gives you 340 square inches of floor space. So that is an extremely sneaky tactic of PetSmart to do, because in the hamster community, we technically do not go around measuring every tiny platform and adding that into the floor space. That's just not how it works. It adds for enrichment, sure, levels and platforms, but it's not adding to the overall floor space. Also, does anybody else get this weird sense of like, I've seen that cage before somewhere? Yeah, because it oddly looks identical to the Furplast Favola. Like, identical. Literally copied and pasted this cage, which is quite interesting. I don't know if Furplast and PetSmart partnered up or PetSmart just stole their idea maybe. Another super odd thing to me is that you're going to notice that the other enclosures, PetSmart has created multiple entrances. They've got like one on the top, one on the side, and like that pull-out base. But this enclosure, they've only created a top tiny door entrance. Tiny. And then once again, we don't know the pan depth size, but looking at the height, I'm gonna say that it's probably only about 4 inches deep. But then, what makes it even worse, we got this hole again in the middle, and that is the dedicated space for the 6.5-inch wheel to go. So you can't even fill this entire base up, because if you do that, the wheel isn't going to turn. Not that the wheel is suitable anyways, but it defeats the entire purpose of a deep base. And the last enclosure we have to look at is the Full Cheeks Hamster Startup Dream Home, going for $199.99 US. And when you look at it in how much Canadian dollars that is, it's a lot. So the size listed on the box is 23.4 inches long, 19.5 inches wide, and 19 inches tall. So on the box, it claims to be 596 square inches of floor space. So for a minute, you're like, wow, did PetSmart kind of finally make a bigger enclosure? But no, once again, they've kind of done a little sneaky twist there. It seems that they've added that tiny little top level, because 23.4 times 19.5 would only give you 456 square inches of floor space. This enclosure kind of just looks like a larger version of the first enclosure that we saw. Once again, you've got the 6.5-inch tiny wheel. I don't know why they keep including wheels. They should just not include a wheel at all. It's not doing anyone any favors because you have to throw it away anyways. Then we got the pan depth. Once again, it's not mentioned how deep it is. Like the first one, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll say it's probably 5 to 6 inches deep. And while that's not exactly the most ideal depth, it's definitely at least more than the previous cages they've made in the past, like the Tiny Tails ones, who have a pan depth of 3 inches. While I can acknowledge that PetSmart has created these enclosures bigger than their normal cages, they still are too small and just not up to date. 1 out of 3 of these enclosures fit with the American hamster cage minimum, which I personally don't even follow anymore because I've found it still to be too small. There is quite literally no excuse for PetSmart to not know these things. I know for a fact that their design team looks through the hamster community. This is why we are seeing the square inches suddenly pop up on the box. They've also been sent the Tiny Tails petition that has over 70,000 signatures multiple times. These cages have huge price tags for what you are getting, and the largest enclosure that they sell is likely to be the least purchased because of that hefty price tag. There are other brands that are triple the size of this enclosure for cheaper, and in fact, PetSmart actually sells a 40-gallon aquarium for only $109 US. So something with more space and bedding depth and is going to be better suited for a hamster is even cheaper than their specifically hamster-made enclosure. I can almost guarantee that the price to make these enclosures is quite cheap, and the markup on them is just huge. Now, the reason that I think this is because if we take a look at the Full Cheeks Small Pet Split Level Sanctuary, which is marketed towards guinea pigs and rabbits, this sells for $189 US, and it has an estimate of 1,700 square inches of floor space. So you are telling me a cage with almost 4 times the amount of space is somehow cheaper. Now, unfortunately, because their guinea pig and rabbit cages have such a large bar gap that a hamster can fit through, they usually aren't going to work for a hamster unless you are taking mesh and meshing it over. Now, my theory as to why it's so hard for PetSmart to make a large enclosure for hamsters is because if they started making a, let's say, 900 square inch enclosure for hamsters, This means that they're also going to have to start making larger enclosures for rabbits and guinea pigs, because you can't make a 900 square inch hamster enclosure and then have 1,000 square inch enclosure that is meant for guinea pigs and rabbits. People are going to start questioning, why is a hamster need 900 square inches, but then rabbits and guinea pigs can go in the same sized enclosure? That doesn't make sense. They are a lot bigger. So PetSmart then would have to also create larger guinea pig and rabbit cages, and they don't want to do this. I don't believe they don't want to do this type of thing. They don't want your pets to thrive. Now, obviously, I've never designed or created a hamster cage to be sold to the public, but I do not think it is that hard to create a suitably sized hamster enclosure. They could even make a large enclosure that is just flat packed and has to be built at home. This way you would save space in the shelves, because flat packed, obviously, you can have more. And I think the design team gets paid enough that they likely could come up with some sort of idea similar to this. Night Angel, Rhody Pet, and Living World Green have already shown that this is a possible idea. So those are my own thoughts and opinions on these enclosures. Would I recommend somebody go out and buy these? No, I think it is a complete waste of money for the amount of space and things that you're getting, because the majority of these things are not going to work out for the hamster anyways, and you can put that money towards an actual cage that is going to help your hamster thrive. Let me know what your thoughts are on this entire topic below. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!